Here is the dark, immersive hook and introduction, crafted entirely in English and ready for the voiceover. It sets a chilling, authoritative tone and perfectly prepares the listener for the massive journey ahead. Since the day you were born, you have been fed a very comforting lie. You were taught that the world is fair, that hard work is always rewarded, and that honesty is the ultimate virtue. But as you grew older, you began to notice the cracks in this illusion. You watched the ruthless ascend to the top while the humble were forgotten. You saw friends turn into rivals, and you realized that beneath the polite smiles and the quiet handshakes of everyday society, a silent, invisible war is raging. This is the game of power, and whether you choose to play it or not, you are already on the board. You are either the architect of your own destiny, or you are a disposable pawn in someone else's grand strategy. There is no middle ground. In this definitive masterclass, we are going to tear down the veil of conventional morality and expose the brutal, unvarnished truth of human dynamics. We are going to decode the most dangerous, strategic manuscript ever written on the subject of control. But we will not simply list these rules like an academic lecture. Instead, we are going to travel through the blood-stained corridors of ancient palaces, the smoke-filled backrooms of modern corporations, and the shadowy battlefields of history. We will weave the pure essence of every single law directly into your mind, through the triumphs of those who conquered and the tragic mistakes of those who were crushed. Forget what you think you know about right and wrong. In the realm of power, there is only perspective, leverage, and survival. Eliminate all distractions. Put on your headphones. Surrender to the narrative. The masterclass is about to begin, and the way you view every human interaction is about to change forever. Listen closely. To begin your ascent, you must understand a fundamental truth about the human ego. Those who stand above you must always feel superior. It is a common mistake to believe that by displaying your full brilliance, your wit, and your undeniable talents, you will gain the favor of your superiors. In reality, you are sowing the seeds of your own destruction. Imagine a grand palace in 17th century France. Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister to King Louis XIV, was a man of immense charm and intelligence. He wanted to secure his position, so he threw the most lavish party in the history of the world at his new chateau. He thought that by showing the king his incredible taste and wealth, he was proving his loyalty. But as the fireworks lit up the night sky, Fouquet didn't see the coldness growing in the king's eyes. Louis XIV didn't see a loyal servant. He saw a rival who was outshining him in his own kingdom. Within weeks, Fouquet was arrested and thrown into a windowless cell for the rest of his life. The sun does not tolerate stars that shine too brightly in its presence. When you are in the shadow of a master, you must be the mirror that reflects their light, never the source of it. Make them feel more intelligent than they are, and you will be rewarded with safety and promotion. Outshine them, and you will be erased. As you navigate the treacherous waters of power, you will naturally look for allies, and your first instinct will be to turn to your friends. This is a fatal error. Friendship is a landscape built on the shifting sands of emotion and shared memories. But power is a game of cold utility. You must never put too much trust in your friends, for they are the ones who will betray you first. Why? Because envy is a silent poison that grows most rapidly in those closest to you. A friend feels entitled to your favor, and when you rise, they feel a subtle sting of inferiority. They know your weaknesses, and they will use them to undermine you the moment their interest shifts. Consider the story of Michael III, a Byzantine emperor who saved his friend Basilius from poverty, raising him to the highest ranks of the court. Basilius, overwhelmed by the emperor's gifts, eventually felt the weight of his own debt. To escape the feeling of being beholden to his friend, he murdered the emperor in his sleep and took the crown. If you want loyalty, look to your enemies. An enemy has everything to prove. When you hire a former rival, they will be more loyal than a friend because they must work 10 times harder to earn your trust. If you have no enemies, find a way to create them. A man without enemies is a man who lacks the friction necessary to sharpen his own blade. To move effectively through the world, you must become a ghost a master of the smokescreen. You must learn to conceal your intentions with the calculated precision of a predator. Most people are open books. They broadcast their plans, their desires and their next moves, believing that honesty is a sign of character. In the realm of strategy, honesty is a vulnerability. If your opponents know what you are reaching for, they can move to block your path before you even take your first step. You must wrap your true goals in a thick fog of distraction. Use a decoy interest to lead people down the wrong trail. Talk incessantly about a goal you have no intention of pursuing, or display a fake emotion to mask your true coldness. Think of the legendary strategist Ninon de l'Enclos, who taught a young marquis how to win the heart of a countess. She instructed him to visit the countess every day, but to never speak of love. Instead, he was to talk of philosophy and other women. This created a profound confusion in the countess's mind, making her obsessed with figuring him out. By the time he revealed his true intent, her defenses were already shattered. When people cannot see your destination, they cannot prepare a defense. Be a puzzle that no one can solve until it is too late. Finally, you must master the most difficult tool of all, the economy of words. You must learn to always say less than necessary. Power, in many ways, is a game of appearances, and the more you talk, the more common and weak you appear. When you speak too much, you inevitably say something foolish, exposing your insecurities to everyone in the room. Silence, however, creates an aura of mystery and authority. It makes people uneasy. When you meet an opponent's long-winded argument with a short, cold silence, they will begin to fill the void with their own nervous chatter, revealing secrets they never intended to share. Consider the Sun King, Louis XIV. When his ministers brought him complex problems and desperate pleas, he would listen in absolute silence, his face an unreadable mask. After they finished, he would simply say, "I shall see," and walk away. This brief response kept his court in a state of constant terror and respect. They never knew where they stood. Powerful people intimidate by saying little. The less you say, the less likely you are to reveal a weakness, and the more profound your few words will seem. Keep your tongue on a leash and let the silence do the work for you. Once you have mastered the internal control of your tongue and niet, you must step into the blinding light of the social arena. Here, you are no longer judged by your intent, but by the shadow you cast upon the world. This brings us to the foundation of all social power, your reputation. In the game of power, your reputation is the invisible guard that walks miles ahead of you, clearing the path or poisoning the well before you even arrive. It is a fragile glass tower that takes decades to build and a single second to shatter. Consider the legendary Chinese general Zhuge Liang. During the War of the Three Kingdoms, he found himself in a terrifying position. He was defending a small city with only a handful of soldiers, while a massive army of 150,000 men approached. He did not panic. He did not hide. Instead, he ordered his soldiers to open the gates, and he sat atop the city wall, playing a lute and burning incense. When the enemy general Sima Yi arrived, he looked up and saw the calm, smiling face of Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi knew Liang's reputation for being a master of traps and deceptions. He was so terrified by the general's reputation for brilliance that he assumed the open gates were a deadly ambush. He ordered his 150,000 men to retreat without firing a single arrow. Zhuge Liang's reputation did the fighting for him. You must identify the one quality that defines you, whether it is your ruthlessness, your efficiency, or your mysterious wisdom, and guard it with your life. A single smear, a single doubt, and the fortress of your influence begins to crumble. If you have a weak reputation, attack someone else's to build your own. Once it is established, it becomes a weapon that works even while you sleep. However, a great reputation is useless if no one is looking at you. You must understand that in this world, what is invisible does not exist. You must court attention at all cost. Many people believe that being modest and quiet is a virtue, but in the realm of power, modesty is the suicide of the ambitious. You must become a magnet for the eyes of the masses. It does not matter if you are loved or hated. What matters is that you are the center of the conversation. Think of the 19th century showman, P.T. Barnum. He understood that the public is a bored animal that craves a spectacle. When he opened his museum in New York, he didn't just put up a sign. He hired a man to simply walk around the block, placing bricks on the ground in a specific pattern, saying absolutely nothing. A crowd gathered to watch this mysterious bricklayer, and eventually the man walked into Barnum's museum. The crowd followed him, paying the entrance fee just to satisfy their curiosity. Barnum would even write anonymous letters to newspapers attacking his own shows as scams, knowing that a scandal draws 10 times more attention than a compliment. You must create an air of mystery around yourself. Be unpredictable. Use bright colors, loud gestures, or a calculated silence that forces people to wonder what you are thinking. Never let yourself blend into the gray background of the crowd. If you are not being watched, you are not being counted. As you become the center of attention, you will find that the demands on your time and energy become overwhelming. This is where the amateur fails and the master thrives. You must learn to get others to do the work for you, while you always take the credit. Your time is your most precious resource. Do not waste it on tasks that a subordinate, an employee, or a desperate friend can perform. You must be the conductor of the orchestra, not the person playing every instrument. Look at the world of the 17th century painter Peter Paul Rubens. He was one of the most successful artists in history. But if you look at the thousands of masterpieces that bear his name, he actually painted very few of them with his own hands. He created a factory of genius. He would sketch the initial idea, and then a team of world-class specialists, one for the landscapes, one for the animals, one for the fabric, would complete the painting. In the end, Rubens would walk in, touch up a few details to give it his signature soul, and sell it for a fortune under his name alone. The world remembers Rubens, not the nameless assistants who labored in the dust. This is not just about laziness. It is about efficiency and the creation of a godlike aura. When you appear to accomplish massive feats with very little effort, people assume you possess a supernatural power. Let others sweat in the trenches. You must remain in the high tower, appearing as the sole source of the brilliance. Borrow the wisdom of the dead through books, the labor of the living through hire, and never let the world see the gears turning behind the curtain. Finally, you must realize that the person who moves first is often the person who loses. To truly dominate, you must make other people come to you. When you chase someone, you are operating on their territory, following their rhythm and reacting to their moves. You are weak, but when you force them to come to you, they are the ones who must cross the distance. They are the ones who must abandon their plans. And they are the ones who arrive at your doorstep, exhausted and anxious. You must use bait if necessary to lure them in. Think of the high-stakes game played by the great diplomat, Talleyrand, during the fall of Napoleon. When the powers of Europe gathered to decide the future of the world, Talleyrand didn't go door to door begging for favors. Instead, he stayed in his magnificent house, hosting the most incredible dinners and salons in Paris. He made his home the center of the social universe. He waited for the kings and ministers to become greedy for his information and his influence. They came to him, and because they were on his territory, drinking his wine and sitting in his chairs, he held all the psychological leverage. He negotiated from a position of absolute stillness while they were in a state of pursuit. Whether it is a business deal or a personal conflict, find the thing your opponent desires most, a promise of wealth, a secret, or a chance at revenge, and dangle it just out of reach. Make them travel the long road to reach you. By the time they arrive, they have already surrendered their power to your presence. As you descend deeper into the mechanics of control, you must realize that the tongue is not only a source of foolishness, but a tool of wasted energy. One of the most common traps for those seeking power is the urge to prove themselves, right through words. You must understand this. Win through your actions, never through argument. When you argue with a superior or a peer, even if you are factually correct, you are creating a localized storm of resentment. Words are interpreted through the filter of the other person's ego and insecurity. If you win an argument, you have merely humiliated your opponent, and a humiliated person is a permanent enemy. Instead, let your results speak with a cold, undeniable weight. Travel back to the Renaissance, to the city of Florence. The great sculptor Michelangelo was finishing his masterpiece, the David. A powerful official named Soderini stood before it and, wanting to appear as a connoisseur of art, complained that the nose was too large. Michelangelo did not argue. He did not explain the laws of perspective or the anatomy of the face. Instead, he invited Soderini to climb the scaffolding with him. Michelangelo picked up a chisel and a handful of marble dust he had hidden in his pocket. As he pretended to work on the nose, he slowly let the dust fall on Soderini's head. He changed absolutely nothing. After a few moments, he stepped back and asked the official's opinion. Soderini, seeing the change he thought he had requested, declared the statue perfect. Michelangelo won the favor of the most powerful man in Florence without uttering a single defensive word. In your own life, when someone challenges your vision, do not waste your breath. Show them the finished product. A demonstration has a physical reality that an argument can never reach. Let them see the victory. Never let them hear the debate. However, your own brilliance and strategic silence will mean nothing if you allow the wrong people into your inner circle. You must recognize the phenomenon of infection. Avoid the unhappy and the unlucky. This is not a matter of cruelty. It is a matter of survival. Human emotions and states of mind are as contagious as a biological virus. There are individuals who carry a chronic aura of disaster, who are perpetually surrounded by drama, failure, and emotional chaos. They will tell you they are victims of fate, but if you look closer, you will see they are the architects of their own misery. When you associate with these infectors, you do not help them. They simply pull you down into the dark water with them. Think of the 19th century dancer Lola Montez. She was a woman of incredible beauty, but possessed a soul that thrived on destruction. Every man who fell under her spell, from the composer Franz Liszt to King Ludwig of Bavaria, saw his reputation shattered, his wealth drained, or his kingdom lost in a revolution. She didn't use a blade. She simply brought her chaotic nature into their lives, and the infection did the rest. You must be ruthless in your associations. If you find yourself drawn to someone who is constantly in crisis, run. Instead, seek out the lucky and the successful. Associate with those whose presence brings a sense of order, wealth, and calm. Just as misery is contagious, so is prosperity. If you want to soar, you cannot spend your time with those who are determined to drown. Once you have secured your environment from the infectors, you must turn your attention to the architecture of your relationships. To be truly powerful, you must learn to keep people dependent on you. The moment someone can do without you, they will. Freedom is a luxury that only those at the very top can afford. For everyone else, freedom is a threat to their survival. You want to be the person who holds the keys to the kingdom, the one whose absence causes the entire machine to grind to a halt. Power is not about being loved. It is about being necessary. If you are liked, you can be replaced. If you are needed, you are immortal. Look at the rise of Otto von Bismarck, the man who unified Germany. He was serving a king, William I, who initially disliked him. But Bismarck made himself so vital to the king's survival, handling every diplomatic crisis and every internal threat with a genius that the king could not replicate, that the monarch eventually became his puppet. William I once remarked, "It is difficult to be king under such a man." He hated Bismarck's arrogance, but he could never fire him because he knew that without Bismarck, his crown would fall. You must cultivate a skill or possess information that is so unique and so vital that no one dares to challenge you. Never teach your subordinates enough so that they can function without your guidance. Be the master of the secret ingredient. The more dependent people are on you, the more freedom you actually possess. To achieve this level of dependency, however, you must first bypass the natural defenses of your targets. People are naturally suspicious of those seeking power. To melt this ice, you must use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. A single, well-timed act of kindness or a surprising moment of honesty can act as a Trojan horse, allowing you to enter the fortress of someone's trust. Once inside, you can do as you wish. This is the distraction technique of the master manipulator. The human mind is hardwired to believe that an honest gesture is a reflection of a person's true character. Use this to your advantage. Consider the legendary conman Victor Lustig, the man who famously sold the Eiffel Tower. When he was trying to scam the notorious gangster Al Capone, he didn't start with a lie. He took a large sum of money from Capone for a deal, held it in a safe for 2 months, and then returned every cent to him, claiming the deal had fallen through. Capone, used to being cheated by everyone, was so stunned by Lustig's honesty that he immediately trusted him with even more wealth, believing he had finally found a man of integrity. Lustig used that trust to disappear with a fortune. In your interactions, give a small, visible gift or admit to a minor, harmless weakness. This creates a psychological halo effect, making people blind to your much larger, hidden agendas. One sincere move covers 1,000 dishonest ones. It is the ultimate shield, allowing you to move through the world with the appearance of a saint while maintaining the mind of a strategist. As you maneuver through the unforgiving landscape of ambition, there will inevitably come a moment when your own resources are depleted and you must rely on the strength of another. When you find yourself in this vulnerable position and must ask for help, you must absolutely banish the concepts of gratitude and mercy from your vocabulary. It is a fatal flaw to believe that people will assist you because of your past good deeds or out of the goodness of their hearts. The human animal is entirely pragmatic. They are driven by their own needs. If you remind a superior of a past favor, they will quickly find a way to ignore you, because no one likes the suffocating feeling of being in debt. Instead, you must appeal exclusively to their self-interest. Consider the ancient political theater of Athens. Just before the outbreak of the Peloponnesian War, the city of Corcyra was facing annihilation by the Corinthians, and both sides sent ambassadors to Athens to beg for a military alliance. The Corinthian ambassador spoke first. He passionately reminded the Athenians of all the times Corinth had helped them in the past, pleading for their loyalty and gratitude. The Athenians listened with cold, bored expressions. Then, the ambassador from Corcyra stepped forward. He did not mention gratitude. He did not speak of morality. He simply pointed out that Corcyra had the second largest navy in Greece, and if Athens allowed them to fall, those ships would be captured by their enemies. But if Athens allied with them, their combined naval power would be unstoppable. The choice was made instantly. Athens chose Corcyra. When you pitch an idea or ask for a lifeline, you must construct your request so that the other person sees a massive, undeniable benefit to themselves. Make the profit to them so obvious and so immediate that it would be against their own survival to say no. Once you have secured your allies and positioned yourself in the social hierarchy, you must realize that information is the ultimate currency of control. But you cannot simply demand that people reveal their hidden weaknesses, their secret desires, or their next moves. Defenses are always high. Therefore, you must pose as a friend but work as a spy. Every casual dinner, every innocent coffee encounter, every lavish party is an active battlefield of intelligence gathering. You must become a master of the subtle probe, asking indirect questions that provoke people into revealing more than they intended. Step into the opulent world of the early 20th century and observe. Joseph Duveen, the most legendary art dealer in history. Duveen wanted to secure the billionaire industrialist Andrew Mellon as a client, but Mellon was famously cold, secretive, and difficult to approach. Duveen did not simply knock on his door. Instead, he secretly tracked down Mellon's staff, his valets and his associates, generously paying them for seemingly harmless information. He learned exactly what clothes Mellon wore, what food he ate, his daily routines, and his secret obsession with specific types of classical paintings. Armed with this dossier, Duveen orchestrated a coincidental meeting with Mellon in an elevator in London. During that brief ride, Duveen casually mentioned his own personal tastes, which magically mirrored Mellon's down to the smallest detail. Mellon was instantly captivated, believing he had found a kindred spirit, a true friend who understood his soul. He invited Duveen to his room and over the coming years purchased millions of dollars of art from him. Mellon never realized that his perfect friend was actually a highly calculated intelligence operation. You must do the same. Listen more than you speak. Create a false sense of intimacy and watch as people willingly hand you the keys to their destruction. However, gathering intelligence will inevitably lead you into direct conflict with rivals who wish to see you ruined. When that clash occurs and you finally manage to outmaneuver your opponent, a very dangerous and deceptive emotion often clouds the judgment of the victor: pity. You must override this biological trap. When you strike an enemy, you must crush them totally. A fire left smoldering, no matter how small, will eventually catch the wind, reignite and burn your empire to ashes. An enemy who is only partially defeated will spend the rest of their life nursing their hatred, waiting patiently for the exact moment you are weak to exact a devastating revenge. Look at the bloody history of 17th century Japan. The great warlord Tokugawa Ieyasu had fought for decades to unify the country. He had defeated the massive army of the Toyotomi clan, but the young heir, Toyotomi Hideyori, was allowed to live in the impregnable Osaka castle. Ieyasu thought that by showing mercy, he would win the boy's loyalty, and he believed the clan was too weak to ever pose a threat again. He was wrong. For years, every rebel, every dissatisfied samurai, and every outcast flocked to Osaka Castle, rebuilding an army under the banner of the surviving heir. Ieyasu realized his catastrophic mistake. In his final years, he had to march an army back to Osaka. This time, there was no mercy. He burned the castle to the ground, eliminated the entire bloodline, and slaughtered every last supporter. Only then did Japan experience hundreds of years of uninterrupted peace under his family's rule. You do not negotiate with a venomous snake. You sever its head, whether it is a corporate rival, a toxic relationship, or a business competitor. You must remove their ability to ever threaten you again. Leave them no hope, no resources, and no avenue for retaliation. Finally, after you have asserted your dominance, eliminated your enemies, and established your worth, you must master the delicate economics of human presence. Scarcity dictates value. In the beginning of any rise to power, you must be hyper-visible. You must be everywhere, embedding your image into the minds of your targets. But once your position is secured, your constant, predictable presence will slowly dilute your power. The more you are seen and heard, the more common you appear. You must use absence to increase respect and honor. When you suddenly withdraw from the group, from the conversation, or from the market, people will begin to talk about you. They will wonder where you are, what you are plotting, and why you are no longer seeking their approval. In ancient media, a man named Deioces wanted to be king, but the land was ruled by chaos and local tribes. Deioces set himself up in his village as a judge. He was so fair, so incredibly brilliant at solving disputes, that soon people from all over the region were traveling days just to have him settle their arguments. He became the most necessary man in the country. And then, at the height of his popularity, he simply quit. He locked his door and refused to judge any more cases, stating he had to tend to his own life. The country immediately plunged back into violence and lawlessness. The people were so desperate for his return that they gathered and begged him to come back. Not as a judge, but as their undisputed king. He had manufactured a massive demand simply by removing his supply. Do not suffocate your audience, your lover, or your peers with your endless availability. Step back into the shadows. Force them to miss you. When you return, your words will carry the weight of an oracle, and your presence will command absolute reverence. As you establish your presence and expand your influence, you must understand a fatal vulnerability in human psychology: the desperate need for patterns. People crave predictability. They constantly observe your habits, your routines, and your reactions so they can put you in a mental box. The moment they figure you out, they stop fearing you, and worse, they can anticipate your next move. To maintain absolute control, you must shatter their assumptions and keep others in suspended terror by cultivating an air of unpredictability. When you act in a way that defies all logic and past behavior, you force your opponents into a state of exhausting mental paralysis. Step into the high-stakes arena of the 19th century battlefield. The legendary Confederate General Stonewall Jackson was terrifying to his Union enemies, not just because of his aggression, but because his movements made absolutely no sense. He would march his army in the wrong direction, stop randomly in the middle of the day, or attack at midnight when his men were supposedly exhausted. The Union generals, trained in classical military logic, spent more time trying to decode his bizarre behavior than actually fighting him. They were terrified of what they could not understand. You must introduce this same calculated chaos into your own life. Break your routines without warning. React with cold silence to an insult you would normally fight over, or shower unexpected praise on an enemy. By scrambling the signals you send to the world, you become a dark room that no one dares to walk into. They will never know where you are going, which means they can never set a trap for your arrival. When the pressure of this psychological warfare mounts and enemies begin to encircle you, your biological instinct will scream at you to retreat. You will want to build high walls, lock the doors, and surround yourself only with those you trust. This is the instinct of a hunted animal, and it is entirely wrong. You must never build fortresses to protect yourself, for isolation is the most dangerous trap of all. A fortress cuts you off from the lifeblood of power, information. When you are locked away in a tower, you cannot see the rebellions brewing in the streets. You cannot hear the whispers of betrayal among your guards, and you lose touch with the shifting reality of the world. Look at the tragic paranoia of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. After unifying the country, he became so terrified of assassination that he built a sprawling network of palaces connected by secret underground tunnels. He never slept in the same room twice and severed contact with all but his closest advisors. He thought his isolation was his absolute shield. But when he suddenly died while traveling, his small, isolated circle of advisors simply hid his death. They kept his rotting body in a carriage, forged his will, murdered his rightful heir, and seized control of the empire for themselves. His fortress did not protect his legacy. It blinded him and handed the keys directly to his executioners. You must stay in the crowded streets of the social world, circulate constantly, make yourself accessible, and use the crowd as your shield. You are far safer moving through a bustling marketplace of information than hiding in a silent, windowless room where no one can hear you scream. As you circulate among the masses and engage in the endless maneuvers of strategy, you must develop a supreme, almost predatory sensitivity to the different types of people in the jungle. Not all opponents play by the same rules, and a tactic that subdues one enemy might trigger a catastrophic explosion in another. You must know exactly who you are dealing with, and above all, you must never offend the wrong person. There are certain individuals whose egos are so fragile and whose memories for insult are so infinite that they will dedicate the rest of their natural lives to your destruction over a minor slight. Travel to the 13th century and witness the catastrophic miscalculation of Muhammad II, the Shah of the Khwarezmian Empire. He received a peaceful caravan of merchants sent by an emerging leader from the east named Genghis Khan, arrogant and blind to the reality of his opponent. The Shah's governor seized the goods and slaughtered the merchants. When Genghis Khan sent ambassadors to calmly demand justice, the Shah humiliated them, shaving their beards and murdering their chief. The Shah thought he was displaying dominance over a distant barbarian. He did not realize he had just offended the most relentless military genius in human history. Genghis Khan dropped all other wars, marched his Mongol horde westward, and completely wiped the Khwarezmian Empire off the face of the earth. He diverted rivers to flood the Shahs birthplace and left pyramids of skulls where great cities once stood. In your daily life, before you issue an insult or launch an attack, you must ruthlessly assess the target. If you sense a deep, irrational insecurity or a history of vindictive behavior, smile, bow politely, and walk away. Never awaken a sleeping dragon simply to test the sharpness of your sword. Finally, as factions form, office politics erupt, and wars break out around you. There will be intense pressure for you to choose a side. People will demand your loyalty, and they will try to pull you into their conflicts. You must resist this urge with every fiber of your being. Do not commit to anyone. The moment you pledge your absolute allegiance to a person or a cause, you surrender your autonomy and become their pawn. You inherit their enemies, their flaws, and their inevitable downfall. The ultimate position of power is to stand in the center, aloof and unattached, while others exhaust themselves trying to win your favor. Consider the brilliant reign of Queen Elizabeth of England. When she took the throne, England was a weak, divided nation surrounded by the massive, wealthy empires of France and Spain. Both empires and the powerful noblemen within her own country demanded she marry and commit to an alliance. But Elizabeth understood that the moment she married a Spanish prince, France would attack and she would become a mere wife to a foreign king. So she played the ultimate game of non-commitment. For decades, she dangled the prospect of marriage to the King of Spain, to French royalty, and to her own courtiers. She sent love letters, she hinted at engagements, but she never signed the final paper. Because she remained uncommitted, everyone treated her with absolute reverence, showering her with gifts and maintaining peace, constantly hoping they would be the one to win the prize. By never committing, she maintained complete control over all of them, turning a weak island into a global superpower. Be the master of your own soul. Let others fight for your attention, but remain the unreachable prize. To truly ascend in the world of power, you must master the most difficult mask of all, the mask of the fool. Intelligence is the quality humans are most proud of, and as a result, it is the quality they are most insecure about. When you display your brilliance, you unconsciously make everyone around you feel slightly inferior, creating a quiet, simmering resentment. To bypass this, you must play a sucker to catch a sucker. You must convince your target that they are smarter than you, perhaps even much smarter. When they believe they have the intellectual upper hand, they relax. Their guard drops. They stop looking for the hidden dagger in your hand because they believe you aren't even capable of holding one. Think of the legendary 19th century con artists who would wander into high-stakes gambling dens looking like confused, wealthy country bumpkins. They would stumble over their words, ask stupid questions about the rules, and allow the sharks at the table to laugh at them. The sharks, blinded by their own feeling of superiority, would become reckless, betting everything they had against this simpleton, only to realize too late that they were being bled dry by a master strategist. In your professional life, if you are entering a new environment, do not walk in as the expert who knows everything. Walk in as the student, the one who needs guidance, the one who is lucky to be there. Let your rivals enjoy the intoxicating feeling of being your teacher. While they are busy feeding their egos by explaining the world to you, you are quietly mapping their weaknesses, stealing their secrets, and positioning yourself to strike. Being underestimated is the greatest strategic advantage you can possess. But there will be times when the odds are so heavily stacked against you that neither masks nor brilliance can save you in an open conflict. When you find yourself facing an overwhelming force, your instinct will be to fight to the bitter end for the sake of honor, or to run away in a panic. Both are the moves of an amateur. Instead, you must use the surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. Surrender is not a sign of defeat. It is a tactical maneuver designed to buy you time and space. By surrendering, you deprive your enemy of the pleasure of crushing you. You deny them the glory of a fight. While they are basking in the easy victory of your submission, you are working in the shadows. You stay close to them, learning their routines, infiltrating their inner circle, and waiting for the inevitable moment when their power begins to rot from within. Consider the strategy of the great playwright Bertolt Brecht when he was summoned before the House Un-American Activities Committee during the Cold War, while other writers fought the committee, shouted about their rights, and ended up blacklisted or imprisoned. Brecht played the part of the cooperative, slightly confused foreigner. He answered their questions with polite, humble ambiguity, appearing to surrender to their authority completely. The committee, satisfied that they had broken him, let him go. He left the country the next day, free to continue his work, while his more honorable peers were ruined. Surrender is a shield that hides your hidden blade. It allows you to survive to fight another day, while your conqueror grows soft and arrogant, believing the war is over. As you navigate these complex maneuvers, you must be careful not to dissipate your energy. The world is full of distractions, minor battles, and tempting side paths that promise small rewards. If you try to be everywhere and do everything, you will end up being a ghost, present in many places but powerful in none. You must concentrate your forces. Power exists in its most potent form when it is focused into a single, unstoppable point. You must find the one fat cow that will provide you with milk for a long time, rather than wandering from one thin cow to another. Intensity always beats extensity. Look at the rise of the great banking dynasties such as the Rothschilds. They did not try to fund every small merchant in Europe. Instead, they concentrated their vast resources on the highest levels of power, funding entire governments and wars. By becoming indispensable to the kings and emperors themselves, they gained a level of control that no amount of diversified, smaller investments could ever provide. In your own career, identify the one skill, the one relationship, or the one project that has the potential to change everything, and pour every ounce of your intellect and energy into it. Do not spread yourself thin trying to please everyone or master every minor task. A single deep well is worth more than 1,000 shallow puddles. When you strike with concentrated force, you break through barriers that others have spent years chipping away at. Finally, to sustain your position at the top, you must master the delicate social grace of the environment you inhabit. Whether you are in a royal palace or a modern boardroom, you are in a court. And to survive the court, you must play the perfect courtier. The courtier is a master of the middle ground. He is never too bold, yet never invisible. He praises without appearing to be a sycophant, and he criticizes without appearing to be an enemy. He is a chameleon who adapts his color to the mood of the room. Being a perfect courtier means mastering the art of the indirect move. If you want to influence the person in charge, you do not tell them what to do. That offends their ego. Instead, you drop a hint, tell a story, or ask a question that leads them to believe the idea was theirs all along. Think of the great courtiers of Versailles. Under Louis XIV, they knew that a single, misplaced word or a moment of visible ambition could lead to exile. They mastered the art of being graceful under pressure, turning every interaction into a performance of elegance and wit. They knew how to deliver bad news with a smile and how to make their successes seem like a happy accident rather than a calculated plan. In the modern world, this means being the person everyone likes, the person who is always helpful, but who silently moves the pieces on the board to their own advantage. The perfect courtier is the most dangerous person in the room because you never see him coming. He is the master of the soft power that eventually hardens into an iron grip. To truly step into the inner circle of the powerful, you must first recognize that the version of yourself that exists today is likely a creation of others. Your parents, your teachers, and your society have spent years carving you into a predictable, manageable shape. They want you to be a fixed character in their story. You must shatter this mold and learn to recreate yourself. Become the architect of your own public image. Power is a theatrical game, and you must be the lead actor, the director, and the costume designer of your own life. Do not accept the boring role that has been handed to you. Instead, forge a persona that is larger than life, one that commands attention and inspires awe. Think of the legendary George Brummel in 19th century London. He was not born into royalty or immense wealth, Yet he became the most influential man in English society simply by inventing a new character for himself, the dandy. He mastered every detail of his appearance, his wit, and his posture with such obsessive precision that even the king began to mimic him. He turned himself into a work of art by constantly refining your image and refusing to be defined by your past. You gain a supernatural advantage. You become a moving target. When you control how the world sees you, you control how the world treats you. Never be afraid to shed your old skin and emerge as something more formidable. The more you treat your life as a performance, the more power you have over the audience. However, as you take center stage and begin to manipulate the pieces on the board, you will inevitably find that the path to dominance is often covered in dust and blood. Mistakes will be made and ruthless actions will be necessary. This leads us to a rule of absolute survival. Keep your hands clean. You must maintain an appearance of perfect grace and efficiency, never allowing the stains of a failure or the stench of a dirty deed to touch your skin. You must become the master of the cat's paw, the agent who does the dangerous work while you remain in the shadows. Appearing as a paragon of virtue, history is filled with leaders who survived because they knew when to sacrifice a scapegoat. Consider the terrifying efficiency of Cesare Borgia. When he conquered the region of Romagna, it was a lawless land of bandits. To restore order, he hired a ruthless man named Ramiro di Orco to do the brutal work of execution and terror. Di Orco was successful but became hated by the people. Once the job was done and order was restored, Borgia did not thank him. Instead, one morning, the people of Romagna woke up to find Ramiro di Orco's body cut in half in the public square. Borgia had used the man's cruelty to clean the land, then executed the man to prove his own justice to the people. He kept the result and discarded the tool. You must always have a fall guy, a subordinate, or an unlucky associate who can take the blame for every disaster. Your reputation must remain untarnished, like a white marble statue that hides the dark machinery beneath it. But even a perfect reputation is not enough if you wish to command the absolute devotion of the masses. To reach the heights of true influence, you must tap into the deepest, most irrational part of the human psyche. Play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. Humans are inherently lonely and confused. They are desperate for a cause, a leader, or a grand mystery to follow. If you offer them a new faith, wrapped in vague promises and grand rituals, they will not only follow you, they will worship you. To do this, you must keep your language simple, but your visions enormous. Do not speak in cold facts. Speak in myths and emotions. Think of the 18th century charlatan Cagliostro. He traveled across Europe claiming to have discovered the secret of eternal life and the ability to turn lead into gold. He never proved any of it, but he didn't have to. He surrounded himself with incense, mysterious robes, and elaborate ceremonies. He spoke in riddles and held secret meetings at midnight. People were so hungry for wonder that they ignored the lack of evidence and showered him with fortune and loyalty. He created a movement out of thin air. To build your own following, you must stand above the crowd as a source of hope. Give your followers a common enemy to hate and a grand future to dream of. The more you shroud your methods in mystery, the more divine your power will seem. When people believe, they stop questioning. And when they stop questioning, they become your most powerful weapon. Finally, once you have built your image, secured your scapegoats and gathered your believers, there will come a moment where you must strike. Many people fail at this final hurdle because they hesitate. They worry about the consequences. They overthink the risks, and their doubt seeps through their pores for everyone to see. You must reject this weakness and enter action with boldness. Any mistake you make through audacity can easily be corrected by even more audacity. But a mistake made through hesitation is a permanent stain. Timidity is the mother of failure. It invites the contempt of your enemies and the doubt of your allies. Boldness, on the other hand, creates a psychological smokescreen that masks your insecurities and your lack of preparation. Consider the sheer nerve of Pietro Aretino. a commoner who became the most feared man in Renaissance Italy. He had no army and no title, but he wrote with such savage boldness, attacking kings and popes with his words, that everyone assumed he had some secret, immense power protecting him. They were so terrified of his audacity that they paid him protection money just to keep him quiet. He bluffed his way to the top because no one dared to challenge a man who acted with such total confidence. When you move, do not tiptoe. Kick the door down. If you are going to ask for something, ask for the world. The world is a crowded place, and it will only step aside for the person who moves as if they already own it. As you begin to taste the sweet, intoxicating nectar of victory, you will be tempted by a dangerous illusion, the belief that your momentum will carry you forever. Most people are blinded by the excitement of a successful first step. They celebrate too early, they lose their focus, and they allow the momentum of their own success to carry them into a trap they never saw coming. You must resist this impulse with cold, surgical discipline. You must plan all the way to the end. This means calculating every possible obstacle, every potential betrayal, and every tragic twist of fate that could occur before you reach your final destination. If you do not see the end, you are not a strategist. You are a gambler. Consider the tragic fate of Vasco Núñez de Balboa, the Spanish explorer who hacked his way through the lethal